So in the Bodhisattva Vows that we have in the Pearl of Wisdom Book 2, the Red Prayer Book, many, many years ago, when we were translating these with Geshe Jamba Gyatso in Italy, and so it's very clear in them that some of them have 2 parts, and or sometimes 3 parts, and to transgress it, you only need to do 1 part. You don't need to do both parts. And so on the third of the root ones, okay, not listening although another declares his or her offense, or part B, with anger, blaming him or her and retaliating. It sounds like from that it's the same situation of somebody apologizing, and then either you blame them and retaliate or you don't listen. But in further reading in this book, it seems like that part B of the third one is basically striking anybody. It doesn't have to be in the context of somebody apologizing to us. It's, blaming and verbally or physically, going after somebody. Okay? So, because the way it appeared before was like it was part of this thing of somebody apologizing. But as you read on in what Dakpo Rinpoche says, and I checked some other things, it seems like they're 2 different things, One is striking sentient beings, and the other is, not forgiving them when they apologize. Okay? Okay, so by the way, the group in the 6th session, before I had given you some homework and said to take the short sadhana and write out where the different samaya were and everything. Did you do that? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Was it helpful? Yes. Yeah. Who didn't do it? Okay. Might be. Yeah, it's helpful to write it, because then you can go back and make sure that you covered all of them, okay? And you can compare it with the long one, and all the different points in the long one, okay? Okay. And then I was thinking also in terms of your meditation, of course, thinking about these different precepts, and of course, there's one way to think about them in terms of a very legal way. What actually constitutes a full offense and what doesn't. Okay, so you can think about it that way, so it's very clear in your mind what is a full transgression and what isn't. But beyond that, go and look at them in terms of what kind of mental states are they talking about, what kind of behavior are they talking about, regardless of whether you've done the full one or not. Okay, like the one about being miserly, okay, it has to be somebody who's asked you in a proper way and you're the only person that they can turn to, there's nobody else. Okay, so to be a full transgression, those things need to be intact. But then looking beyond that to, well, what areas in my life am I miserly in? And how does my miserliness come up in terms of dharma, in terms of material goods? Yeah, and so using it as a more expansive thing to check into different behavior. Or in the one about forgiving, well, maybe we haven't, completely blamed somebody and, dumped on them and said, what you did was outrageous and doesn't deserve to be forgiven and, something like that. But maybe inside, we really haven't forgiven somebody, And maybe, we're always talking about people who do phony baloney apologies, they don't really believe it. Well, maybe we do phony baloney forgiving and we say, oh, yes, it's okay. But inside, we really want to get even with that person. We really haven't let go of our anger towards them. Okay, so use these things to look at various aspects of your mind and how things come up. Yeah, and so especially if you're doing Vajrasattva, then it gives you more to purify. In case you're getting bored in your meditations because you've gone through the 10 non-virtues how many times, then there's all these other, kind of things that actually fit into the 10 non-virtues, but it's easy to overlook. And it's very helpful to look at these kinds of details because it makes us more aware. Okay?
I was thinking about one situation in particular where I think I've forgiven them,
Mm-hmm.
but it still causes me pain.
Mm-hmm.
And so, has the forgiveness been complete?
Okay.
Because I do think I have.
Yeah. So it's a situation where you still feel pain, but in your mind you've forgiven them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can see why it happened.
You can see why and understand it. So I think the forgiveness is very much about letting go of the anger towards the person. Mm-hmm. Now, underneath the anger there could be the hurt. Yeah, so in order to prevent anger from ever coming up again, you also have to release the hurt. Yeah, but whether you've really forgiven them or not, that's only something you can tell. Yeah, I can't determine that for you.
No, but I'm just wondering if still, for some reason, I haven't figured out how to let go of the pain yet.
Yeah.
Then is that still harboring something, right?
Well, what do you think? Is it still harboring something if you haven't let go of the pain?
I guess so.
The story's still there.
Yeah?
This too, so the story is still there.
Yeah.
And it's a bit solid still.
Yeah. So the story is there and it's a bit solid and we haven't really let go of the story completely. Yeah. So this is where I think the thought training practices are so incredibly valuable, because thought training gives us a way of looking at the situation with a completely different story. It's like my story, my usual story that my afflictions believe in is based on all sorts of exaggerations and, thinking the impermanent is permanent and the blissful, the suffering, what's suffering in nature is blissful and what's impure is pure and what doesn't have a self has a self. My story is completely based on all those kinds of distorted conceptions and interpretations and things like that. Okay, but the thought training isn't based on those same distorted conceptions, those same kinds of inappropriate attention. Yeah, and so it's giving a different story to the same situation. Yeah, you might also try, in NVC, as a way to that they have for making your story less solid, is to just describe the bare facts. Yeah, without the words that we so often use in literature that evoke emotion and interpretation and so on. Yeah, I was realizing that the NVC way of describing something is totally opposite to the way you do something when you're doing like a creative writing, or you're trying to, tell a story that's interesting to people. There you use a lot of emotion-evoking words. NVC, it's just, like your one was great with your daughter-in-law. I walked in the room and she was talking to somebody else.
That makes me so mad.
And when you can see it like that, then you can see how angry and how hurt you were. It's so silly, wasn't it? But see, you had described the situation with all sorts of things, She knew I was coming in the room and she deliberately wanted to ignore me because she doesn't like me and she wants to come between me and my son and this and that. I mean, a whole elaborate thing that was built up there. Yeah. So sometimes just describing the situation in non-evocative words is very helpful. Yeah. And then, really using the thought training to look at it from a different viewpoint. Yeah. I mean, bottom line is, this came about because of my previous actions. Yeah. If I'm still hurt by something someone did, why was I in that situation? My own previous actions. That's the bottom line. Yeah? So why should I complain about being hurt if it's my own self-centered actions that created the cause for that to happen to me? Yeah, so rather than sit there and moan and groan, let's just learn from the situation and do things differently in the future. Yeah. But, the thing is, we don't really believe it came about because of our own previous actions. We think that's just like a clever little Dharma kind of trick that you do. But really, it's their fault. We just kind of say that so that we feel better, and we look like good Buddhists, but it's really their fault. Right? Okay, so it takes a lot of working on this, and this is why we do the retreat, to really familiarize ourselves with a different way of looking at the thing and really believe that different way of looking at it. Mm-hmm. Yes?
Okay.
Aren't you glad you asked the question?
Oh my God.
Okay, so we're on number 4. So Chandra Goman says, repudiating the Mahayana and expounding fallacious doctrines. So the 4th transgression of the Bodhisattva vows is abandoning the Mahayana and propagating false teachings. This misdeed, therefore, also presents 2 aspects. So you can break it in either way. For the first, rejecting the Mahayana, the basis or object of our repudiation, is the teaching of the great vehicle. The teaching denied, however, must represent the entire collection of Mahayana scriptures by including both aspects of its doctrine, the vast and the profound path. Okay, so what it's getting at here is this one isn't just saying, oh, this sutra, this Mahayana sutra isn't the word of the Buddha or something like that. This is saying the whole Mahayana path, is not the word of the Buddha, or it's phony baloney, or it's just, out on a limb. It doesn't make any sense. And so taking the whole Mahayana path, both the profound teachings on emptiness and the vast teachings on developing bodhicitta, and repudiating the whole kit and caboodle. Okay, so it's not just regarding one teaching or one sutra. Okay? What I find interesting is because this whole thing of validating the Mahayana scriptures as valid scriptures has been this ongoing historical thing since, not time without beginning, but getting close to it. No, since the early centuries, of AD, when Mahayana first started to become prominent. First it was more just an option of a spiritual path, and then there began to be more scriptures talking about it, and it was only later that it became an actual tradition. At the beginning, it wasn't. It was just, there were different ways that people practiced, and this was one way. But as the scriptures started to appear and it started to become a different tradition, then there were people who said these scriptures aren't authentic. They're what's the word? Sacrilege? Not sacrilege. No, I'll think of it. Anyway, they're apocryphal. Yeah, it means that they're made up. Yeah, okay. And so, you know, so there's still many people today who believe that. Yeah, who, I mean, you go to any Buddhist conference or you read things in different articles in magazines from different Buddhist traditions, the non-Mahayana traditions, and they'll say Mahayana was just something that people made up later, you know, it's not actually the teachings of the Buddha, because the Pali Canon, and, you know, and the Theravada tradition is the only true, they're the only true teachings, and everything else was made up afterwards because it appeared later historically. So there's been this kind of controversy for centuries. Yeah. So the idea here is, if you've taken the Bodhisattva vow, you know, you obviously have some faith in the Mahayana, and you think that aspiring to become a Buddha is something really wonderful, and the Bodhisattva path is something fantastic, and the scriptures, you know, teaching you how to do that are just so amazing. Yeah. So after you've done that, if you then develop this idea that, well, no, they aren't really the teachings of the Buddha, then you see how you're completely undermining your whole Bodhisattva practice. Okay, so that's why this one's a transgression here. Okay. His Holiness talks a lot about this, you know, that you know, and why he believes that the Mahayana are the teachings of the Buddha, and so on and so forth. So for some people, this becomes quite a big issue. I mean, you find this, yeah, in some of the scriptures. They really go into it quite a lot, proving the Mahayana is the words of the Buddha. And then for some of us, it's like, who cares, you know? You read the teachings, and they're completely fantastic, and I'm not concern, you know, this isn't a big issue to me. This is, wow, if you read these teachings, I can't find anything better than this. So, you know, the thought of doubting it because historically they appeared later doesn't even come into the mind. Okay. Oops. Okay, so the action of abandoning the Mahayana teaching is verbal. It's accomplished by asserting that the teaching is not Lord Buddha's, for example. Yeah? Okay, so you see how you're completely like giving up the whole basis for your Bodhisattva practice if you say that. Yeah, you're kind of, you know, digging yourself one of those luxury ditches that you're gonna decorate with your rebellious attitude. Yeah. Okay, for the second aspect of the transgression, expounding fallacious doctrines, we must examine the object, what is falsely presented as a reliable teaching, and the way that doctrine is propagated. A fallacious doctrine is a teaching or philosophy that misleads people. The Great Way, which was Lama Tsongkhapa's text talking about the Bodhisattva restraints, refers to them as black teachings. In other words, ones that spark deeds that are harmful to ourselves and to others. They are false in that they appear to represent a spiritual path, but in fact do the opposite, for they reinforce afflictions such as attachment and anger, and invite negative conduct such as drinking alcohol and making bloody sacrifices. The action involves personally taking pleasure in such a teaching, expounding it, and prompting others to follow it. Okay, so it's teaching something that you're, you know, presenting as the real Dharma, as the real path to enlightenment, that doesn't lead to enlightenment at all, but instead makes people have wrong views and encourages their attachment, encourages their anger, you know, things like that. Okay? So, you know, there's one thing in terms of teaching a path, and you can look at any New Age newspaper and you see lots of these kinds of teachings. Yeah. But also to look out for is some of the psychological ways that some therapists encourage people to deal with emotions. I remember being at one conference and they were having people from the audience speak, and there was one man who got up and he was saying, you know, the such and such happened when I was a kid, and my therapist is telling me that I must be angry, you know, and there's something really wrong with me if I'm not angry. And you know, and I'm really trying hard to be angry, you know. So that kind of thing. I think most therapists would say, you know, somebody who counseled somebody in that way wasn't really helping the person. But still, you know, I've met more than one person whose therapist is telling them how they should feel and discrediting them if they aren't angry. And so in that way, they're kind of encouraging somebody's anger to come out, when maybe the person genuinely doesn't feel angry. Yeah? So, you know, so these false teachings could be things, you know, I mean, all sorts of misunderstandings about Tantra, you know, sex is going to lead you in the utmost blissful path to nirvana as quick as possible, and you know, and you can see even in our monastic precepts, there's, you know, it's very severe if a monastic starts talking like that and says, oh, the Buddha didn't say desire was a hindrance on the path. In fact, it's good for the path, you know. And if you say that, it's a very serious offense. And if a novice says it, then they're expelled. You know, so it's quite a serious thing. So some kind of, you know, doctrine that just encourages people's wrong views, you know, to offer, you know, do sacrifice, animal sacrifice and so on. And we may think that's strange, but a few years ago in Nepal, there was this huge animal sacrifice. It was horrible, like tens of thousands of animals were killed. And even sometimes when I'm in Southeast Asia, you know, people's families, they're not really Buddhist, they just kind of follow some folk tradition, and they'll sacrifice animals. Yeah? So, you know, there's lots of teaching that still exists like that. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, just to be quite careful of that kind of thing. Yeah?
When someone asks for what do you think about it from one teacher of like Buddhism,
Mm-hmm.
that we've been talking about Dole, and
Mm-hmm.
what do you say in that? I prefer that I don't say nothing, because it's like what can I say
Mm-hmm.
about that? No, but there are two centers in Oaxaca,
Mm-hmm.
but people will sometimes say, what do you think about that?
Mm.
And I don't know how.
Okay, so you're talking about a situation where there's a teacher who's teaching something that's a bit controversial or acting in a way that's controversial, and people come to you and say, what do you think about them? You know? So the best thing here to do is to say, you know, it's you should know before you go there that what this person is teaching or their behavior, whatever it is very controversial, and so you need to check out very clearly, you know, yourself, and see if they're teaching according to the general Buddhist way, and if they're behaving according to the general Buddhist ethics. And so don't just believe that everybody who has followers or who calls themselves a teacher has actually, you know, understood things properly. Yeah. So rather than directly criticizing the person, say, you know, they're really full of phony baloney, I usually say, you know, there's controversy, and so it's very good if you know, you should know that there's controversy. Don't go in blindly, you know. But if you really want to go, then you should check up about what the teaching is and what their behavior is. Yeah, and see if it corresponds to general Buddhist teachings. And then they're going to know, well, how do I know that? You know? Well, go and listen to His Holiness Dalai Lama, you know, listen to some other teachers, read some books by, you know, teachers of the lineage, and see if what this person is doing or how they're behaving corresponds with it. Yeah, because this, you know, it happens, and especially in the West, you know, there's so many teachers and so many different things going on, and you could learn this and that and the other thing, and then it's only after a while, you know, that you figure out, oh, gee, you know, I started out with this group or this teacher, and it really helped me at the beginning. But now I'm seeing that the, you know, how the teacher's behaving or what's going on or this or that, it's not really in accord with the general Buddhist thing. And so I feel like I need to really make that transition and find another teacher, and, you know, and find something where I really feel that this is the authentic stuff, yeah. And so, yeah, it happens because, you know, here in the West, it's a spiritual supermarket, isn't it? And there's everybody around, and, you know, there's no kind of, you know, you don't need any certification, you know, to teach, and, you know, I mean, Buddhism isn't, you know, really like that. So, you know, and people don't know the Dharma really well. His Holiness says that this kind of thing happens because Buddhism is very new in the West. So people don't know, for example, what is proper behavior on the part of a monastic or on the part of a teacher. Yeah? And then you have teachers here who are out on their own, and, you know, they don't have the support of other Tibetans who know how to behave and things like that, and so they, you know, go off on left field or some way or another. Mm-hmm.
In Germany, we have a society where all the Buddhist associations are in it, who are acting properly in accordance with the main Buddhist principles, I don't know. And so the people have better orientation. So I don't know if do we have this in America too? No, we don't have a big, you know, you're saying in Germany that there's one, like, German union of Buddhist organizations, and so they screen the different groups. Yeah, no, we don't have anything like that. Yeah, and I think it would be very difficult in the US to set up some standard that everybody would agree upon. Because if you look in American history, you know, the way Americans are is every time, I mean, you see, we have so many different splinter groups from every religion that don't exist in Europe, because people would come here because they didn't like what was going on in Europe or somewhere else, and then they would have their group, and then inside that group they start having different ideas. And so if you have different ideas, what do? You just break off and start another branch. You know? So with the Baptists, how many kind of Baptists are there? You know, besides the recovering ones. You know, I mean, there's Southern Baptists and so many,
American Baptists.
And American, so many different kinds of Baptists. Any religion you look at in the U.S., there's so many different branches that don't exist in Europe. Yeah? Yeah. This is part of our freedom. Yeah, you just break away and start your own thing.
But I think it's also because we're so diverse. I mean, in Europe, you know, we have people from Europe and Asia and South America and Mexico and Canada. I mean, we're such a diversity.
Yeah.
That also happens.
Yeah, we're a very diverse population, you know, ethnically and racially and so on. But you have to see, so many of our roots came. Who moved to America? The people who didn't fit in Europe.
Yeah.
Yeah, the people who didn't like the way things were done there. You know, so this is the whole energy. Yeah.
The land of misfit toys.
Yeah, and then, you know, so it started out from Europe and then from other countries, you know, people who didn't fit in, people who were refugees, people who were persecuted, people who didn't toe the party line. Yeah, so that's who came into this country. Mm-hmm. Okay. So according to one tradition, the first 4 major transgressions of the Bodhisattva vows found in Arya Sanga's ethics chapter and in Chandragoman's 20 verses are each further divided into 2, making 8 in all. However, they are counted in such a way that they constitute the first 4 of the 18 major downfalls. Okay? So even though the first 4 have 2 parts, we don't count them as 8. We count them as 4. After explaining the 4, Arya Sangha then advises his readers to refer directly to the sutras for the other transgressions. Acharya Shantideva took this suggestion to heart and explored the Mahayana sutras for the remaining major misdeeds contrary to the Bodhisattva vows. In his compendium of trainings, that's Shiksha Samuchaya, he then compiled the transgressions that he discovered, 14 from the Akashagarbha Sutra and 1 more from the Sutra for Skillful Means. If we tally Shantideva's 14 and Asanga's 4 and add 1 more, we have 19 instead of the usual 18. In fact, this is not a problem, as one found in the Akashagarbha Sutra coincides with one listed by Asanga. Okay? Having covered the first 4, we will now continue with the remaining 14 given in Acharya Shantideva's compendium of trainings. Okay, so number 5 is from Shantideva, and it says, taking what belongs to the 3 jewels. So the owner, this is one of the elements of it, of the possessions stolen is one of the 3 jewels, the Buddha, Dharma, or Sangha. To commit this transgression, therefore, one possibility is to steal something that belongs to a living Buddha or to symbols of Buddhas, statues, paintings, or stupas that represent Buddhas, such as the clothes, scarves, ornaments, and so on that have been offered to them. Money or anything else that is offered to a Buddha statue or a stupa is also considered the property of the Buddha in question. Okay? So even though the Buddhas don't claim ownership, you know, over something, the statues aren't saying this is mine, and the Buddhas in the Pure Land aren't coming and saying this is mine, you know. Still, there's things that have been offered to the Buddha by devotees with pure intention. And so those things belong to the Buddha, and we shouldn't just appropriate them for ourselves. So temples have to be very, very careful, because often if you put the donation box right by the altar, it looks like your donation is for the Buddha. Yeah, when actually maybe it's for the people living in that temple. Yeah, I think many Buddhists know that, and they, you know, they give with that in mind. Yeah, but still, you know, it's a little iffy. Okay. Actually, Venerable Wuyan goes into quite a bit of discussion about this in choosing simplicity. You know, what a monastic community should do when they have things that people have offered to the Buddha, and, you know, they're accumulating, or, you know, what do you do? Somebody offers, you know, a diamond necklace to the Buddha. Do you keep that diamond necklace on the altar? You know, where the Buddha is? Do you just take it and sell it? What do you do with this? Yeah, because people do offer things to the Buddha in that way. Yeah, or like, you know, when we're rolling statues, people will bring cloth and say, this is for rolling the mantras, or they'll bring paper, or they'll bring jewelry, or all sorts of things, and they're offering directly to the Buddha. Yeah, so we shouldn't just go and say, well, you know, Buddha can't use that and I can. Yeah, I mean, even like as the monastery, you have to really sit and deliberate, you know, if this is something, you know, for example, if somebody offers this diamond necklace to the Buddha, but, you know, you would like to build a new temple, yeah? So, you know, Venerable William's very clear that if you take the diamond necklace and sell it, that the money used from selling it should be used for something to do with the Buddha, not something to do with us, okay? But something to do with the Buddha, okay? Yeah, so, yeah, so things that have been offered in that way, we should. Now, sometimes things, you know, they're there and then they're damaged, and so we have to take them down, you know. They were offered to the Buddha and we have to take them down because they're damaged. It doesn't mean that you just let everything collect dust on your altar because it was offered to the Buddha. Or, you know, the fruit that was, you know, that's offered to the Buddha. Okay, so we should see ourselves as the caretaker of the altar, you know, and we're taking care of the Buddha's possessions. So we take it down, and the Buddha gives his permission for the things to be distributed afterwards and for people to eat them. Yeah, what I notice sometimes in some places in Southeast Asia, people will bring an offering, you know, and put it on the altar, and then after the teachings, when it's time for refreshments or potluck lunch, then they just take it down and give it to everybody. And I used to say to them, well, you got to look, and are you actually offering that to the Buddha? Or are you just putting it on the altar until you feel like eating it? Yeah, so we can eat the things that were offered to the Buddha, but when we offer them, we should really offer them. And when we take them down, you know, let's have some awareness that is something that belonged to the Buddha, that it's like the Buddha is giving us to eat. Not just, you know, I'm taking it down because I'm hungry now. Okay? Okay. The second possible owner is the Dharma jewel. The Dharma either as a scriptural transmission or the scriptural realizations. Remember I was talking the other day about the Dharma, the transmitted Dharma and the realized Dharma. An example of something owned by the Dharma as scriptural transmission would be the Dharma books themselves, the cloth covers in which they're sometimes wrapped, the materials used to produce such books, or the money offered to print them, as well as any offerings placed before them. Okay, so the transmitted Dharma is the meaning of the scriptures. So this, you know, the things that could be offered to that transmitted Dharma could be the books, or the book covers, or the bookshelves, or, you know, any of quite a number of different things. And so again, you know, we shouldn't just take these things and use them for other purposes. Now, it might happen that, let's say you built bookshelves for the Dharma, and then later you renovate your temple and there's new bookshelves. Yeah, so does that mean you can't use the old bookshelves for anything else? Yeah, so this is the kind of situation where I would think that you would ask the Dharmas, the permission of the Dharma, and say, you know, we got something new that is better, and so this is old, so may we take it and use it for some other purpose. Yeah, and try and have it as some purpose as much as we can have to do with the Dharma, and not just, you know, where we put our sci-fi novels or something. Yeah. Okay. Similarly, money that people offered, often, you know, to print books for free distribution, that money should be used to print the books. If you don't use it for that purpose, then you contact the donor and you say, you know, we already printed the books and this amount was left over. Can we use it for X, Y, and Z purpose? Yeah, the same thing could go for, you know, something that was offered to the Buddha. You can always contact the donor afterwards and say, you know, you offered this diamond necklace, but we don't really feel comfortable leaving it on the altar because we don't know what's going to happen to it. You know, would it be okay with you if we, you know, used it to fill a statue or sold it and, you know, made something nicer for the altar? You know, you can check with the donors often and ask. Okay? Okay. As for the property of the third jewel, the Sangha, this refers to anything belonging to a single member of the Sangha who is an Arya. Okay? So here for the Sangha, we're talking about either somebody, an individual who's an Arya, who's realized emptiness directly, or to a group of a minimum of 4 fully ordained non-Arya members of the Sangha, 4 non-Arya bhikshus or bhikshunis, okay, which we now have at the Abbey. Okay? Is it necessary to steal from all the 3 jewels to commit this transgression? No. Taking something that belongs to any one of them without permission is sufficient. Okay, so this one is one that can be very, very easy to do when you're staying at a monastery, and then there's things, and you know they belong to the monastic community, but you think, well, you know, nobody's going to miss this. I can take it. Yeah, or, you know, you just take something without asking. So they always say it's much better to ask somebody at the community. Yeah, if it's not your community, if it is your community, if you're a monastic and you're in that community, then if you take something, it's not a full transgression because you already have partial ownership of this, but it's still some part. But if you're not a member of that community and you're a guest, then, you know, it's easy to do this. So I talked to one woman, for example, who was used to be the person who managed the money for one temple, because the monastics themselves didn't do it. And she said that she always put in a little bit extra, you know, in case she had accidentally miscounted or, you know, misused something or whatever. Okay, so to do that kind of thing. Yeah. Okay. Otherwise, it's just always good to ask. I mean, of course, you go in the bathroom, anything that is out, yeah, please use the toilet paper. You don't have to ask every time. Yeah, okay. Yeah, but we shouldn't just go and take supplies for our own personal use. If we take supplies because we're using them for the community, yeah, then that's fine. But if we're taking something for our own personal use, then, you know, that's not so good. So, you know, going in and taking stamps that belong to the community, or, yeah, stuff like that. Yeah, it could be a lot of different things. So always good to ask. Then if you receive permission, then it's very clear. Okay. Next, we shall consider the substance stolen. The property may consist of real estate, food, drink, clothing, and means of transportation. In fact, anything that has been dedicated to one of the 3 jewels. The Great Way says that no minimum amount of stolen property is specified in the commentaries. However, if we use our reasoning power, it would be logical to apply the same amount indicated for the vows of individual liberation, which is at least 1 unit of the local currency. Therefore, taking anything more than at least 1 unit of the local currency is considered theft. Now, perhaps that's the standard in the Mula Sravastivada, Vinaya, 1 unit of the local currency. as Venerable Wu Yin taught it and practiced in the Dharmakuptaka, it's something of value such that if it was taken, the law would be involved. So it wouldn't just be, like $1 or something worth $1. It would be something that was, more valuable, like taking the computer or something like that. That doesn't mean it's okay to take other things that are small, but but at least not the big ones. Okay. Regarding the manner of possession, a Buddha statue will not assert its ownership like a living person would do. Therefore, awareness of ownership on the part of the owner is not a criteria. The rule is that the object in question has been offered to someone, offered by someone to one of the three jewels. Okay, so another way in the Sangha that they really emphasize is don't take something that belongs to the Sangha and give it to your friend. Yeah, so that your friend will like you and da-da-da-da-da. Yeah, so we have a little gift closet, yeah, and often we put our own things in it, but we have a community policy that if you're the one who put something in and later you decide to give it to your friend, it's okay to do that. Otherwise, it's okay for somebody else to give it to like one of the Abbey supporters or, those of you who came here and are leaving, we gave you little gifts, things like that. So, we have like a common community policy for how to use those things. And so in that way, nobody has to worry about kind of stealing things, yeah. But I know very often when sometimes I'll be traveling somewhere and the possibility to make a donation somewhere will come up, and I won't have time to ask the whole community, but I feel like, every time before, whenever I've asked the community if it's okay to make a donation to a certain something, this, that, and the other thing, people have said yes. So I go ahead and do it. Yeah. If it's something from the Dharma account, that one in particular I have the say over. But if it's something that hasn't been offered specifically to the Dharma account, sometimes I'll write you or I'll inform you about it after I come back, so that people know. But, and it's not exorbitant sums where people would say, you gave away all the money for building Chenrezig Hall. What in the world are you doing? Yeah. Yeah. But it's usually, like when I was in Mexico, I gave something for the people who are supporting the Central American immigrants. Remember I told you about that, and so different things like that come up, and people are always very happy that we gave something. So that too is kind of a community policy, so that we can, be rest assured. I remember when you were in Singapore, somebody had given some cookies to and said, here, this is for everybody at the Abbey, and you had so many boxes of cookies, how are you going to fit them all in your suitcase? And so you gave them to different people who came and visited you. Yeah. So in that kind of thing also, I would assume that the community would be very happy that you gave those things away. We certainly wouldn't expect you to, pay $70 in what do you call it, overweight luggage to bring home boxes of cookies. Yeah. So I think most people would agree that that was a very nice thing to do, and that you gave them away. Yeah. Anybody want those cookies back? Yeah. Okay. As for the subject, if the thieves are monks, I guess, or nuns, or other members of the Sangha, the transgression occurs only when they take something that does not belong to their own community, but to another community or to one of the other two jewels. Okay. Next, we shall consider the thinking behind the action with which within which we distinguish the thief's identification of the object and their motivation. Concerning identification, the transgression occurs only if the precise object that they intend to steal is taken. For example, if people wish to steal a butter lamp from a shrine and instead mistakenly take a vase, since they have not stolen the object that they originally intended to steal, and their identification of the object is incorrect, the transgression is not complete. So this applies also to our regular precept of stealing. If you steal something that you didn't intend to steal, it's not a complete action. Same with the action of killing. If you wanted to kill this one, but you killed that one by accident, it's not a complete break of the precept or a complete negativity. Yeah.
I don't understand that.
Okay.
Because the intention was to steal first of all.
Yeah.
But I stole the wrong act, the wrong thing.
Yeah. If your intention was, I just want to steal anything in general, then whatever you take, you've transgressed it. But if your idea was, I want to steal this object, but it was really dark, and instead you stole something else, then actually what you didn't fulfill your actual motivation and purpose. It doesn't mean that it was karma-free. There's still negative karma, okay? But because it didn't correspond to the actual thing, yeah? Okay, so that's why. Okay. On the other hand, if they intend to steal anything that belongs to the three jewels, regardless of what it is, then provided they correctly identify the item as belonging to one of them and succeed in taking it, the transgression is effectively accomplished. Okay? The motivation is the wish to acquire by theft for personal use an object that we know perfectly well does not belong to us and is in fact the property of one of the three jewels. Note that we must be moved to act by one of the kleshas, one of the afflictions, and intend to use the stolen article for ourselves. In other terms, if it is compassion that inspires us to take something that belongs to one of the three jewels, and we intend to use it to help someone in need, although it is a serious offense, it is not a major transgression. Okay? I'm thinking here when it's talking about motivation, like during the Cultural Revolution, and during the communist takeover also in Tibet, many things were destroyed, and many things were also taken from the monasteries. Now, some of the things that were stolen then later appeared on the free market in Hong Kong for people to buy. Okay, so people who stole things from the monasteries with the intention to, sell them and make a lot of money, that's definitely stealing, okay, from the three jewels. Someone else, on the other hand, may have taken a statue or a text or something from the temple because they didn't want it to be destroyed. And so they took it and I've heard of people burying things or really hiding them in some way. So that clearly is not, an act of stealing from the Sangha, because their whole motivation was to protect the holy objects, and it was done out of respect for the three jewels, not out of personal concern. Mm-hmm.
There is a market in China that there are Tibetan people that sell things, but I don't know where they come from.
Yeah.
And I buy a Buddha, little Buddha, and they were selling. I think I don't know, from the how do you say when you own money but my home que es como el que rezas, que es como el círculo que rezas. I think they're inside. They have some like papers inside. I don't know.
Yeah, like a prayer wheel that's going
wheel.
around. Yeah, with papers inside.
They were selling that.
Uh-huh.
And I buy some ones, but the thing is, I was thinking, okay, okay, I can conserve, but what do you think is better to give it for offer from like a sangha or a place? Because I don't know if they are, where they come from.
Okay, yeah, so you bought something.
Because they're selling a lot of things
Yeah.
about Buddhas and many things, but I don't know where
Yeah.
they come from.
Yeah, I encountered this too, you know, if you go up into the mountains in Nepal, people will have their claws on the ground with many holy objects and they'll just sell them and barter them and things like that. And so your question is, do you buy those, or if you buy them, should you give them to a temple? Because we're not really sure where they came from. You know, that one's really difficult because there might be some people who actually want to sell those things because they need the money. But according, to many of the lamas, to take a holy object and sell it with the intention to earn money is extremely negative karma. And like Zopa Rinpoche, if he knows that somebody earns their livelihood through selling holy objects with the intention, just to make money, he won't even accept food from them. Yeah, because there's such a pollution involved. But so, but it's hard because we don't know what the motivation is of the people selling the things. We don't know the origin of the things, yeah. So, I don't know. I mean, just thinking about it, the best thing I can come up with is if it's a holy object that we think we can, quote, quote, give it a good home in the sense of really restore it to its position as a holy object and not just an object of commercial business, then we're doing something good.
Yes, because I think the little Buddha, I don't think is something that be in a temple or something like that. Another one.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Right, but it could be, there's many people who make statues of the Buddha and make these things and then sell them. Yeah?
But the best action of that is to maybe can go with someone that really knows about that and say maybe that is original or what, and then maybe give it. I can.
Yeah, I mean, of course, if you can research and find out where the object came from, if it was something stolen or not, but that's the best thing to do. I doubt that many people who are selling religious objects will tell you that it was stolen. Yeah, that they got it from, somebody else who stole it. So we really don't know. But I think what is most important is our own motivation, that we see it as a holy object and want to treat it as such, And if we ever find out, for example, that it was stolen and what temple it was stolen from, then we would be very happy to return it and give it back.
I think at that moment it's really difficult to know that.
Yeah, you don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, then where did you get the Buddha?
Okay.
And when we went to Washington, D.C., all those people...
Right. So that's what I said. Many people make Buddha statues and then they sell them. And this
That's
is
not good?
And I mean, we always said this to our teacher too. It's like, but if they didn't make them, how would we have them?
Yeah.
So, so I guess what happened in old Tibet, what they did is you commissioned a statue and the person made it and then you gave them an offering. So by giving them an offering, they're not charging you a price and treating the statue as a commercial article. Okay, so that's very often what we do with our Dharma books out there, is we say they're freely offered. You're welcome to make a donation to the Abbey. We don't say to the Abbey for the book. We say to the Abbey. If somebody writes on their check for a book, then we put it in a special Dharma account because they gave it for a book. But if they don't do that, then we treat it as a regular donation, and in our heart we feel like we're giving the books away. Okay? So the people, like in DC, who are selling it for a price, they're clearly doing it with the intention to make money. Yeah? And according to many of the lamas, that's, you know, to treat a Buddha statue in the same way as you would a used car, you know, something in your mind isn't functioning quite correctly.
So what should I do with my statue?
You can keep them.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I mean, if you have statues, what, that
The little Manjushri?
yeah. Yeah, that you bought there. It's fine. From your half as the person who purchases, you're not creating any negativity. Now, remember, we used to say to our teacher, but we're helping somebody else to create negativity. Yeah. And they said, no, you have to differentiate between your motivation, which is to have a holy object to create merit, and their motivation, which is to earn money for their own personal use. Yeah. At least that's what the teacher said when I asked them.
I don't know what was their personal, maybe they're really generous with what they do and they help.
Yeah, we have no idea. We have no idea what's going on in people's minds. Yeah. But if we purchase statues, I mean, people purchase things, and most of these things, you know, were given to somebody who gave them to us, or purchased by somebody who donated them to us. Yeah. Because we live in a totally different economy now than we did in old Tibet, where, you know, a wealthy person, you know, it's so different because in old Tibet you would have a wealthy person who would commission these things, and then they would belong to that wealthy person. You didn't have a middle class of people who would go out and buy things for themselves. Yeah. So it was a totally different economic system. Yeah, and you know, you would know the person who painted, and they would come and paint there, maybe where you live, and you gave them room and board, and then some kind of offering at the end. Yeah.
I also shared on the BBC last week something that came up for me thinking about refuge, or the reliance part of the Four Prime Powers is that in the West we have quite strong minds of acquisition.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the consumer minds, so we have all of these magazines and internet. We have thousands, millions of holy objects at our beck and call to possess, and how we actually make that transaction. Is it to inspire our minds? Is it to go with the growing paraphernalia of Dharma material that we have right now? Our whole interior design of our apartments is made out of, you know? So I found that, not so much now, but when I was in Seattle, when I could ever look at things, I had a little bit of that mind on how people would think well of me, or they'd be curious about what I had on my walls, and this whole thing about attachment to reputation, thinking well of you because of your prayer flags out in your garden. People think you're cool because you're Buddhist. So I think it's the mind that we sometimes have, being just major consumers in the world.
Right.
It's so easy to acquire without thinking.
Right. Yeah. So it's always best to really check our motivation, and, you know, this isn't just another possession that I'm getting so that, you know, I have a bunch of nice things. Yeah.
So then even like because I have like a Buddha that I bought in Walmart or Target or something like that.
Mm-hmm. That's
so
fine.
Those things that are massively made, it's fine.
Yeah. I mean, you're getting something with a pure mind that wants to have an object to put on your altar to inspire your mind. What I'm talking about is people who make objects for the purpose of earning their living with the intention, you know, of I want to make as much money as possible off of this object by charging as much as I can to somebody. Okay, so that's talking about the seller's motivation.
But then there can also be like, because the other thing that I was telling you about like sculpture and Dharma, could you also be like a sculpture and make like a sculpture for the purpose of sharing the Dharma with people, like to put it in a place so people can come and see? Like,
I mean, if you're an ordinary artist and you make some kind of sculpture, that's your own personal business and you can sell that to earn a living. Yeah, but if you're making Buddhist statues, you know, with the thought that there's no difference between a Buddhist statue and a used car and a computer, I just happen to have these to sell because I want to make a buck. That's what we're talking about, is that attitude. Okay? Okay. Then there's one more paragraph in this little thing. Let me just read that. We didn't get so far today, but anyway. The act of stealing can be accomplished in various ways. We can do the stealing ourselves or have somebody else do it for us. We can take the object stealthily or use force. We can also obtain the desired object by deceit, for example, by first borrowing a book and then hoping that the person we have borrowed it from forgets that we have it. Okay, yeah. The karmic path is complete the moment we think, now it is mine. Up to that point, the theft is not fully accomplished. So, you know, if you're wondering why we ask people to just read in the room where the guest library is, it's because we've had a lot of our Dharma books disappear because people just take it with them to their room, and when they pack, they put it in their suitcase, and even though there's a sticker saying Sravasti Abbey, they take it home with them, and then once it's home, they say, oh, but you know, it's, you know, they have enough books and it's going to cost too much to send it back to them, or they don't even notice, for goodness sake, and they start thinking it's mine. Yeah, so we're trying not only to clutch on to our books, but also to prevent people from, you know, creating some kind of negative karma by, you know, just taking something and then considering it theirs afterwards. Yeah.
So, how long? So I've been carting around a book for 10 years that I borrowed from somebody, and I know it's not, and I don't consider it mine, it's the Dhammapada, but I don't know who I borrowed it from, and I can't give it back. And I'm like,
oh, you don't know who you borrowed it from?
And I'm like, every time I see it, that's not my book. But
oh, but you can't remember. I don't know what to tell you then.
I don't want to steal this book.
Yeah, right. So just keep in mind, well, if I can't remember, and if somebody comes sometime and says, do you have my Dharmapada book, I'm going to give it to them. Yeah. Okay. Good. So let's dedicate.
May the
Spiritual teachers who lead me on the sacred path, and all spiritual friends who practice it, have long life. May I pacify completely all outer and inner hindrances. Grant such inspiration, I pray. May the lives of the venerable spiritual mentors be stable, and their virtuous actions spread in the 10 directions. May the light of Losang's teachings dispelling the darkness of the beings in the 3 worlds always increase. Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niryatayami Due to this merit may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious Bodhi mind not yet born arise and grow. May the born have no decline, but increase forevermore.